Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another PowerLevy Market Research video. Today, we're going to have a discussion regarding what we can learn from journalists as entrepreneurs and market researchers. We're also going to expand on Adam Curtis's observations regarding why the average individual in the Western world today struggles to be motivated by how capitalism is currently constructed. So to frame this discussion, please briefly listen to this clip of Adam Curtis calling a bunch of journalists out on their bullshit.
I'm a journalist. I'm not an artist. I'm a journalist. And what journalists are really good at is, it's the only thing they're good at. Everything else they're very bad at. But what they're really good at is going out and finding out what people think and feel. What I was slightly shocked about this afternoon was that no one on the panel mentioned the people and what the people think about capitalism. Really. They're the people that you are running this system in the name of. That's your job. Your job is to actually make that system work for the people. And I just wanted to very quickly tell you that you've got a real problem, really serious problem. And I don't think you're really facing up to it in any of the conversations you had here this afternoon. In my country and in America, which is really all I can talk about, the people, and we're not just talking about what Mrs. Clinton called the deplorables, but large amounts of the people think that capitalism gives them no future, may not even be capitalism any longer, may have mutated into something else, but certainly is not in their interests. It started with the Iraq War, when those in charge, the think tanks, the politicians, the journalists, lied to the population, led them into a bloody war, which then led indirectly and directly to the refugee crisis you now have around here, which no one knows how to solve. Then there was a financial crisis in which I suppose we members of the mafia would call it skimming and rigging, was shown to be happening on a very large scale in America and Britain, and no one was prosecuted, no one high up was prosecuted, no one was sent to jail. And then we now live in a world where the people, millions of the people, borrow money of such fantastic amount off the banks to buy a small apartment. They will never be able to pay it back. But the apartment is so far outside the city that they have to actually spend the rest of their income on transport backwards and forwards. So sometimes they can't even buy themselves lunch. And I'm not just talking about poor people, I'm talking about people who work in my organisation, the BBC, cannot afford lunch sometimes because they have spent all that money to the banks and to the transport because their apartment is now in zone 6. Because the property prices are so high. The only lunch they have is on Mondays when Starbucks does half-price vouchers. They look forward to that. These are middle-class people. There is real anger. And what they really ask themselves is, what is this all for? And I was brought up to believe that democracy and capitalism were intimately linked. We gave you our vote, so you would take us somewhere which would make life better for us. That link seems to have broken in the minds of millions and millions of people in my country and America. And I'm slightly shocked that you didn't mention it, that view. And it's going to cause you real problems unless you address it. It really is. Because if we don't know what something is for, we're going to turn to someone else who is going to tell us stories about what it's for, and it ain't capitalism. I can tell you that. And I just think that was my main observation. I think you're all very clever, and much cleverer than I am, at knowing all this stuff. I just wanted to report to you, as a journalist, what the people feel, that capitalism gives them no future. None. Zero, because it doesn't tell them a story any longer about where they're going. What is it all for? That's what I want. That's my little rant over.
This idea that journalists are really good, or are supposed to be really good, at understanding what people really think and feel is very helpful for us. I believe we can simplify it even further, though, to seek to understand what people need. And as entrepreneurs and market researchers, we can learn a ton from how journalists investigate what people want and need. This starts with this very simple idea that I like to call, take a fucking walk. Literally go walk around your neighborhood, talk to your neighbors, and get a sense for what the community is looking for. In less fortunate areas, the answer could be as simple as access to reliable electricity. In more fortunate areas, maybe people are dying for a vegan Korean barbecue option. If they need electricity, maybe you sell them a solar system. And if they want a vegan Korean barbecue place, maybe you move the fuck out of there. But either way, I guarantee you that if you do this very intentionally, you will identify one semi-major opportunity that will be clear as day to you. And once you identify a market opportunity with extreme clarity, your motivation to execute on that opportunity will be the highest it's ever been, because you will literally prove a demand while also creating a supply of early customers. So that makes perfect sense regarding retail opportunities, right? But maybe retail opportunities don't interest you too much, and you would like to work with more high leverage clients instead. In that case, you want to go visit and meet with as many law firms and general contractors as possible. Why? Because lawyers and builders are amazing at understanding where opportunities in specific markets lie. Lawyers are great because they literally have an insider look as to who is making lots of money, who isn't, and who's literally going bankrupt. And since they make a lot of money, you might even be able to convince one of them to invest in helping you get started. Because ultimately, all lawyers lack the skills or discipline to execute on any business themselves. Because, well, they're fucking lawyers. They get to see what you make across the deals you do with them, and then they reverse engineer their fee based on your income. That's what they do, if you didn't know. That's why nearly all large successful families force one of their kids to become a lawyer, because lawyers are literally the worst people in the world. Net net, the increased supply of lawyers in a region leads to people trusting each other less, not more. Then that leads to less productivity in an economy. You can go research that yourself, but that's probably a topic for another video. General contractors, however, can provide a great feel for where opportunities are in a market, because I guarantee you it doesn't matter what market you're in. There is something in their supply chain that they're constantly struggling to source. Maybe it's windows, maybe it's tile, maybe it's crown moldings, who knows? But there's always something. They are also the ones who are literally out building the buildings for these businesses. I've seen this recently with one of my partners. He's getting ready to build a bunch of car washes for some guy, and now all he wants to do is be in the automated car wash market, because he has seen under the hood of how these businesses work, the revenue and margins they generate, and of course, the cost of building one. Lastly, if you really want to be a G, go to the mayor's office and buddy up with some of the local elected officials and come up with some plan to make one of them look really, really good. If you help them bring something they know the town needs, and you give them all the credit for doing it so they can have something to talk about on their next campaign, you're golden. So now let's discuss why many of your family members, friends, and loved ones lack the motivation to participate in our economy. And the reason is actually profoundly simple. They have been fucking brainwashed. They are so detached from reality that they now spend huge amounts of their mental energy worrying about national or global problems. And those problems are such a waste of their time because, one, they are so far from possessing any skills that will actually get them in a position to solve those problems. And if they did somehow manage to do that, the odds they wouldn't make the problems wildly worse are almost zero. That is why I'm constantly preaching to people to think locally. And if you don't care about the place you live in enough to do that, you need to move immediately to a place where you do care enough about it to live that way, to live locally, to think locally. And if you do things that way, that doesn't mean you can't then build a multinational corporation, assuming that's your goal. Quite the opposite. Because in order to do that, you need an extremely strong foundation or home base to operate from anyway. Great example, Berkshire Hathaway's headquarters is in fucking Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, guys? But the last thing I want to say on this topic is that if you and your friends are in school and you're taking an entrepreneurship class, I guarantee you, you are being you're being taught the dumbest shit. And I can say that with extreme authority as someone who went to a great college in California, who took these classes and is now living the life of an entrepreneur. It's a giant waste of your time. To make money, you do not need to build some widget or novelty product with venture capital. Living in California, it can really feel that way because the market is so saturated across nearly every industry. But now that I live in Puerto Rico, for 5 years now, I keep identifying simpler and simpler business ideas. Like if one of you guys came here, bought a truck and 5 or 6 dumpsters, and you rented these dumpsters out per week on on a weekly basis, you would absolutely crush it. So with all that said, if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you want to identify the simplest opportunity you can in a market that really needs it. It's really that simple. And instead of going those classes, watch more of my fucking videos. Share them with your friends. Watch them with your friends because I will take all of you to the promised land. I don't care if it kills me. See you next time. Peace and victory. Peace and victory. Woo!